And that's all we had lined up for you tonight here on KTN News Kivumbi 2022. Thank you for joining us. We'll be letting our viewers on KTN home go. Thank you for joining us on this news program. But remember, we continue with the news and more stories and a conversation on divisive elections in Kenya. We're interrogating why this keeps happening. A pattern has been established of political violence, electoral violence, pre and post sometimes, and we're trying to find out how best then can Kenya move forward. We're also looking at data. How have we run our elections in the past? And of course, shortly we'll be taking a look at what happened from 2007, 2013 and 2017. Remember, we also have panelists who are on standby. Lilian Mahiri Zaja, former Commissioner IEBC, former Vice Chairperson of the IEBC, Mule Musau, who is the National Coordinator of Election Observer Group, ELOG, and William Kabogo, who's a former Kiambu Governor. So stay tuned for that. But also remember, President Uhuru Kenyatta just this evening had a meeting with the senior editors from various media houses. He spoke about various national issues, including the BBI and the decision that the Court of Appeal took, the handshake, which we'll be playing, just seeing what the president said about the handshake and why he continues to vouch for it. The president also talked about corruption. So as we continue with the show, we'll continue to play you clips of what the president said in State House today. And of course, most importantly, he's broken the silence and talked about his deputy president, whom he has dared to resign if he continues to double speak when it comes to matters development in government. You're watching Kivumbi 2022. Let the show continue, and I'd like us now to just take a look at the statistics. We're talking about divisive elections. We are seeking to see what has happened in the previous past. Initially, when I was doing the first round of data, we went all the way from 1963 all the way to 1992. Then there was 97, 2002. So then we want to look at 2007 elections. It's very key when we're talking about electoral violence in this country. This was one of the most heated elections that Kenya has ever witnessed, and the loss of life, displacement and destruction of property that was witnessed as a result of that particular election was of a lot of scale. So then the election was held on December 27th. This then, remember, came just after a heated referendum that was witnessed in 2005, where the then President Mwai Kibaki's side lost. So then there was a lot of acrimonious mood around that and how this particular referendum was held. December 30th, the Kibaki was declared winner by a 230,000 votes margin, 8,100 shy of ensuring that they go on a runoff. So that just shows you how close this was and how small the margin was in the 2007 election. Kibaki was then sworn in at night, and this sparked violence in various parts of the country, weeks of protests and violence that saw 1,300 people lose their lives and over 500,000 others displaced. Millions of property was also destroyed during that particular melee that was witnessed in 2007 and early 2008. So then in February 28th, 2008, President Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga signed a peace deal that then would give birth to the Grand Coalition government, and this was brokered by the ex-United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. So then that would see the Grand Coalition government, Nusu Mkate for those who know it as that, take office from then. So then just looking at the numbers from 2007, again, showing you how slim the margin was between Mwai Kibaki of PNU and Raila Odinga of ODM, and this spanning from some agreements that were made in 2002 that Mwai Kibaki would leave it for Odinga. And of course, our panelists will also be chiming in on, so then the space of some of these agreements that politicians make, and then they come out and say there were some aspects of betrayal. So then Kalonzo Musyoka also vied in that particular election with ODM Kenya with 8.91%. And of course, there are others including Kukubo, Nixon Jeremiah, Ng'ethe David Waweru, Nazlin Omar, Pius Muiru, Kenneth Matiba, and Stanley Njindo, who also vied in that particular election. Overall, there were 14 million registered voters in 2007, and only 9 million cast their votes in this particular very contentious elections. And President Uhuru Kenyatta, in that particular meeting with the senior editors, had talked about the 2007 elections, and he was speaking to why perhaps they thought the handshake was very useful for this country. And of course, he has mentioned 2007 and what happened in that particular election. What was the intention of the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga? The president continues to vouch for it and say the intention was for peace. So perhaps maybe we can just take a look at what the president has said this evening when he was talking about the handshake, and then we can get back to this panel discussion here on Kivumbi 2022.
Indeed, as Akisa has said, let's have a look at what the president said in that interview with the editors, touching on a subject of conversation this evening, that to ensure and avert a crisis following the 2017 general election, he shook hands with his handshake mate, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, to avert a 2007 scenario. Let's have a look.
The violence that was occasioned in some parts of the country, and the fact that we were in a very uncomfortable situation as a country between the election, both elections, and actually all the way through till January. And it was upon seeing a possibility of another crisis erupting similar to the one that we saw in 2007, I decided that this country doesn't deserve that. And I thought, and I took it upon myself to reach out to those who were opposing the election and led by the Honorable Raila Odinga. And I said, you know, we need to engage, because at the end of the day, we are both citizens of this republic. Whatever our personal feelings or views or those of our supporters may be, we have a responsibility as leaders to ensure that this country does not find itself in a similar situation. And as I have said severally, again, you know, people forget that it was a very difficult time. I mean, he wasn't willing. I was also very cagey because of the situation, the way it was. But at the end of the day, we were able to talk. And through those discussions, we were able actually to get to some underlying issues that have plagued this country for a long time. And it was then we said that, you know, if only people could learn to sit down and talk the way we are talking, a lot of these problems wouldn't happen. And it was there that, and I really appreciated this fact, because for the first time we said, let's not even talk about government. Let's not even talk about who's in government, who's not in government. Let us talk about these underlying factors. Let us actually come together and say, how can we deal with these issues to ensure that going forward, Kenya will never find itself ever again in this kind of a situation. And we started discussing those underlying factors. And that is what led to what we call our 9-point issues that we ourselves thought, that led to the handshake. And that led to say, we will work together on these fundamental issues that we share as Kenyans, as two Kenyan leaders. And we decided then, let us expand this. Because, after all, there are also other leaders. And that's why we also brought others on board, including some of those, unfortunately, who, for short-term political reasons, are opposed to this particular process.
President Uhuru Kenyatta earlier today in that interview with the senior editors in the country from State House talked about a raft of other issues. Earlier we played some of those clips for you, talking about the deputy president and that in terms of what he's doing with the meetings he's been holding with some of these political leaders, it's all about inclusivity, for which he says the reason why we are all not seeing the deputy president in those sessions is because he's opposed to that message and push for inclusivity for other leaders in this country. He talked about the vaccines and the challenges that surrounding vaccine apartheid in the world, that there's vaccine nationalism and that the Western countries who have the capacities are not being quite open as far as the brotherhood spirit at this time of a global pandemic. Talked about corruption and saying that the government, best of his understanding, is doing all it can and is winning that war, that we have not seen more cases of corruption because the government is doing well. But tonight, of course, our conversation here on Kivumbi 2022 focused on why are Kenya's elections so contentious? Why do we see them degenerate to a matter of life and death? And he has just alluded to that in that last clip we just played, where he said that what informed that handshake with the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga post-2017 is because he feared the country would descend to the kind of crisis Akisa was just walking us through in 2007, where thousands of lives were lost and property worth millions of shillings, of course, destroyed. Hundreds of thousands others were displaced. And so our panel conversation continues here in the studio, and joining us for this last leg of the show tonight is the Pioneer Governor, Kiambu County, that is William Kabogo. Thank you very much for joining us. In case you are just joining us as our viewer this evening, we also have with us Mula Musau, who's ELOG National Coordinator, ELOG standing for Elections Observer Group. So in as far as elections in the country, he is a man who has a good understanding of some of the issues we'll be canvassing this evening. And of course, last but not least, the former Vice Chair of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Lilian Mahiri Izaja. Thank you all for staying with us and for joining us this evening, of course, alongside Akisa. So I suppose we begin where the president and what he has just addressed, and I'll bring that question to you, Governor, that at the end of the day, here we are discussing why elections are so divisive. And we are seeing, even as recent as 2017, the president feared would go back to 2007. Here we are, he has told us BBI in his mind was a thing that would ensure stability in this country. BBI has been trounced once more. So from where he sits, we again perhaps are back in trouble. Do you agree with that analysis?
Partly. Thank you for having me, Sophia. Elections in Africa, not only in Kenya, is a big issue. And I would put this issue, I would say it simply. It is because it's not an election that we have like we have in First World, in Britain, for example. It's an election of who is going to eat, whose time is it to eat, as opposed to whose term is it to serve.
Yeah.
When they deal with who is to eat, then the stakes are very high. It is a do or die. It must be us. The minute we will change that paradigm and think about serving, because it is our time, me going in as president, my ministers, my cronies, and my everybody, it is time to steal 2 billion a day. That is why it is so volatile. That is why it's a big problem.
But devolution was brought to cure it.
If it was to serve,
yeah,
then you fail to serve. You say, hallelujah, somebody else will serve. But it's about eating. When we will finish the culture of eating, we will solve this problem.
But we put
it may look from the
there.
president's statement like Raila Odinga is a big problem. So after Raila is gone, after Uhuru is gone, somebody else is going to come. And if it's fighting to go and eat, the problem will always be the same. It is as simple as that.
But devolution was meant to cure it.
And that's why I
and
say,
you have been a
and
governor.
that's why I say, we do not need politicians. We need leaders. And what is the difference? One looks always at the next general election, a politician. The leader looks at the next generation. If we can think that way, this thing is not a problem. I left Kiambu, it was fine. I walked. I ran to the stadium to hand over tools of power. It was okay for me. Is it okay for everyone? Why is it that it's now looking like it's a matter of life and death for someone or some people? Because they need to go and eat. It is as simple as that.
I know you have something to say about that, but the president has also said the reason why he is not bringing the deputy president to the table is because he continues to oppose some of these initiatives he's taking, the peace initiative under BBI, and that he has talked about, and a lot of other policies that he's putting in place. So then when he brings in this group of, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, and then there's this man who admittedly has a very huge following in this country. And as you've mentioned, maybe they needed to handle the Raila Odinga aspect. But then there's another person they will need to handle. So it would appear to be a never-ending cycle in this country. Do you support what the president is doing? And do you think it will
solve the problem?
Solve the problem at the end of the day.
I think first, I want to agree with Governor that the problem is about not having leaders in place. Because, and we've spoken about this, I think in the other session, we were speaking about the same thing, that it's about politics of eating, it's about politics of the stomach, it's about politics which serve very narrow interests in this country. And therefore, the only way to deal with this thing is to get out of that kind of box. I think there was a noble idea of trying to bring all the leadership in the country to try and discuss about how you can be able to bring everybody on board. That's a beautiful story, in my view, that you need to reach out to everybody who is commanding any constituency out there. And the assumption here is that even these constituencies are constituencies which are not bought constituencies, but constituencies of people who are willing to follow these leaders. So if you want to bring these people in and everybody in, and that's the work of the president because he's a unifier, then the outcome of such a process should be a noble thing for the country. It should be able to change. The only problem that we have is that, and I think we're also discussing this off the cuff, is that we should not have any rebels out of it. If it's about bringing everybody together, there should be an attempt to bring everybody on the table. So I think from that the thinking about it, the conception of trying to bring even the opposition, the reality is, and the statistics also don't lie, in 2018 when the handshake happened, that is the year we registered the highest growth rate in the country, 6 point something. And last year, that is 2020, we have seen that going down because of mainly of COVID. But there was tensions in 2017 which needed to be dealt with. So ideally, it was from a unification point of view, it makes sense to reach out and talk with as many other stakeholders as possible.
There's something that you've said that I want to push back on before we listen to what the president had to say again on what Akisa is asking, bringing people together on One Kenya Alliance. But you both talk about the leaders and having the right leaders. Following the BBI ruling, if you had one of the dissenting judges, cross-board Justice, Honorable Lady Justice Sichali, she talked about Kenyans and people get the leaders they deserve. So it's easy for us to, ideology, talk about good leaders and everything, but they're elected, they don't land themselves there or grab it. It's we the people that get them to office. So at the end of the day, there isn't something fundamentally wrong with what we aspire to and who we get into office.
Right and not right. Right in the fact that, yes, we deserve the leaders that we get. Kenyans have, we've talked about this issue of bad manners in this country for a very long time, and everybody is involved. When there's voter bribery, when there's all these things, it is the villagers, it's the peasants, it's everybody. But not right, because we're also a young country. We're a developing country. We are a country in its infancy. Yes, it's about nearly 60 years of independence, but we're still learning the ropes. I said in the first session, in my view, that we appropriated a colonial legacy of how you accumulate power. And that has been the problem up to date. The people in the village are yet to understand and pack this enterprise of modern governance. to understand it for themselves so that they can benefit from it. And that's why we keep saying, some of us keep saying, what Kenyans need is political education, to learn how to control, to use power for themselves. We are still learning the ropes as we go on, but we must also take responsibility over some of the issues.
We're partly to blame.
We must be very slow learners. Very slow. 58 years after independence. When will Wanjiku understand that it is her job to put me in office? When will she understand that if she makes a wrong choice, she lives with it for the next 5 years? She made the bed. When is it that we're going to pass the back to Wanjiku?
Exactly. And
Because it is Wanjiku who does the election.
It's something you were talking about earlier.
You wanted a governor in Nairobi, you chose one.
It's something
you wanted a president, you chose one. So live with it.
We are
about to go there again and make the same mistake again.
Let's listen to what the president had to say on how his bid to unite these leaders, One Kenya Alliance. We've seen several meetings in Mombasa, here in Nairobi. Take a listen.
If he were to embrace this process that we were, the only reason he's been, because he's been anti that, how you don't call somebody who is against what you're trying to do. He has been opposed to it. For what reason, I don't know, but he has been opposed to it. Those meetings have not been about selecting a candidate. It's by saying, what is it that we agree? We agree on this. How do we birth this baby, that we are all believing in, right? Nobody wants to leave anybody out, because at the end of the day, like I'm saying, if we can actually come together and find people of common mind who want to push a particular agenda, then you have to do it, right? But you can't bring on board who is opposed and literally doesn't want to see it happen. And I fail to understand, because you've been part of the process. It would have been wonderful had we all walked together as Kenyans, right? That's what we did even when we went to Bomas. Didn't we all say, let us come together? Right? But then all of a sudden people are, we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it. So, you can't force somebody something that somebody doesn't want down their throat. That's also not democratic. Yeah? You have to allow democracy to prevail. Huh? And like I'm saying, even on this issue, democracy is what will prevail. People will decide for themselves which way they wish to go.
Well, President Uhuru Kenyatta there once again in an interview with the senior editors. He's talking about we cannot force those who don't want to be on the conversation table. And he's talking about, well, democracy has to prevail. And I imagine we all know who he's talking about and the constituency he's referring to when it comes to those he's terming don't want to come on the table. What then would be your thoughts on all these political meetings that are ongoing? Are they likely to help us as we get into the 2022 election, or are we just feeding yet another monster? Because this is how it starts.
This is a period when politicians come together because of their eye being on the ball. And I'm sure Honorable Kabogo, Honorable Kabogo can speak to that. But I think looking at the noble idea of where the handshake came from, we like that idea of unity. We like stability. That is what democracy is all about. That you're coming together as a nation to implement ideals or ideologies that you all believe in. But now here we are, and he's talking about his deputy who does not believe in his ideologies, who does not believe in those fundamental issues which he has now brought the other people.
Whom he can also not force.
Who he can also not force. But again, we are saying these are the people, and I think we talked earlier on, these are the people. We saw the element of inclusivity amiss in terms of its definition, in terms of how wide he's casting that net. On the other side, this other group that has started the other movement, and I'm sure we should be saying it here in black and white. The UDA have also said they are welcoming any other people or parties that are like-minded to work with them. But this is what politics is all about, that between now and 9th of August, and probably, let's say, up to January next year, we'll be seeing politicians aligning themselves. Discussions on who can work with who, how, where, on what, and why. However, the same question of serving does not arise. The eyes on the ball, the eyes on State House. That we need to get there, we need to get to the resources. This is about control.
And
Control of resources.
But the issue here is, when will the conversation change from the Railas, the Uhurus, the Rutos, to the Wajiko? When will that conversation change?
That
Because
conversation is also controlled by the political elite.
Right now, we are just talking about these people. But remember, out of 47 million people, this is just a handful. It is us who make them. The opportunity is coming in another 9 or 12 months.
But our politics is also fashioned around personalities. We can't deny that.
That's not the case. That's not the case in the Western world. Why have we made it the case here? Why is it that we have to go?
And that is,
what will happen, brother? What will happen if Raila, Ruto, Mudavadi, and the others have to go home now? Is Kenya gone? Are you telling me that we are at the mercy of these 7 people?
No,
that's our problem.
No, we're not the mercy. I agree. We should not be at the mercy of a few people. But the argument will still be made that there is capture. Citizens can also be captured over time. And why I was talking about a young nation is that I feel that from independence we have never been allowed, or we have never allowed ourselves to really understand the role of a citizen properly. A lot of civic education goes on in this country in terms of the do's and the rights and the responsibilities, while we are still seeing problems everywhere in the villages. I mean, it's not just about politics. It's not just politics alone. There are social issues, there are economic issues. We are yet to even grasp our economic opportunities in this country the way we ought to exploit them. I mean, there are villages in this country where people are literally living over minerals, which only a visitor in the country will come and find out later on. And therefore, I mean, titanium, was it titanium or in the coast? So you have these things which are happening, but we have never understood or gotten the authority to be able to exploit even our own natural resources that we have.
Right.
So we are learning the ropes. It does not help that the leadership has not been helping the people to be able to understand that particular role.
Because it for their best interest.
Yeah, of course, it's an elite conspiracy. Yes. Of course, it's an elite conspiracy.
Yeah.
So that is where the space is. But one of the things I need to argue, and a point I want to make, which for me makes is a light at the end of the tunnel. Judiciary. We have been living in a country where even state agencies have been held captive within that elite conspiracy. But we're suddenly seeing some individuals standing up. And it started growing. These things start growing. With Maraga, the nullification of the 2017 elections was a very bold move in this country.
In Africa.
And it tells people something. It speaks to the people about the ability of standing on a particular ground.
Let me ask.
So it grows over time.
Yes. There's a question about, remember the statement that the late Saitoti made, there comes a time when the country
That's
has
more
important, you know? And so reconcile for me a situation where Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister, has been referred to as the enigma. Kenyan politics commands a huge base of support. So that on one hand, 2017, IEBC, after the results are in, lost. Challenged, the election is annulled. But in the second repeat election, he boycotts with the team, chooses not to participate, right? But thereafter, the actions taken because of being aggrieved, like swearing himself in and all of these actions, begin to take that descent. That yes, there are structures, there are laws, there's recourse, legal, but after they felt they'd exhausted that, then they went outside of that, which then got to the country to where it is. So where is the responsibility that we say at the end of the day, every one of these politicians must be held accountable?
Again, if I take the shot, it takes us back to authority. Who is the final authority of the land? The people don't understand it's them. It is them. We have an opportunity in our laws for members of the public to send or to recall their MP. It's there in the law. It has never happened. Why? We've seen in other countries, an MP decides to spend money in a manner that is not prescribed in law. They get the MP from the airport and put him in a dustbin. But here, the more you steal and take to them 200-300, it's okay. It will never change until the day Wanjiku will understand she is the boss. But right now, it's in your hands. I want you to imagine that the competition we have here in politics is like the wrestling thing that everyone likes to watch. And there is the one that they block all the sides and put 7 people inside. And the best man will come out. You have to fight until you take the prize. This is what happens in Kenya. You fight any which way until you get to State House and open the sufuria to eat. It is a country of eating.
Okay.
And this is not Kenya alone. You will look at Uganda, you will look at other countries. This is the story. Why would I want to sit in office for 5 terms? Why do I think that I'm the only person who can lead country X for the next 5 years? I mean, 5 terms. That is 5 by 5, 25 years. Why is it that way? Why is it that you can't even tell us who was the Prime Minister of UK 3 terms away? Because they come, do their job, and go home. They come, do their job, and go home. And this, you know, we will never finish this problem. Yeah. We will talk about IEBC, its independence. It doesn't look independent enough. It sways one way or the other. It receives the phone calls. I remember Chebukati saying 3 or 4 days before elections, I am not sure we have the capacity to hold credible elections. Himself. I'm not sure whether you were in that group then.
No. I'm not sure.
You know, himself.
Been hounded out of
yeah? Okay. And then 4 days later, he comes back and says, we can do it. What happened?
Can I add something here? I think it has not sunk in people what the Constitution of Kenya 2010 envisaged for us. The preamble broadly gives us sovereignty.
Yes.
But we have not unpackaged that sovereignty as a people and grasped it. But now, through institutions, I think people are slowly beginning to see,
that's the realization.
Oh, the judiciary has made a decision to annul the presidential election. Does that mean we are sovereign? Because now they don't even know they're the ones exercising that power.
Piga kura vibaya,
the judiciary. Yes.
Yes.
The other thing is, I just want to pick from the example you gave of our leader, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. He's an enigma. You've said that, and it is true. Remember when we promulgated the new constitution? Everybody was being asked, have you read it? No.
He's read it for us.
Yes, he has read it for us.
You want to know as an enigma, go and swear yourself in tomorrow as people's president. If you will not end up in committee, you will know Raila is an enigma.
The masses are in time, in terms of how we carry our sovereignty. And I'll tell you something else that I saw when I left office, or when I was hounded out of office. We were going around doing some, the continuous voter registration. And, we were calling, taking advantage of local barazas and speaking to people. They looked at me. They told me, why would I listen to you? This was in Nyanza. Why would I listen to you to tell me to register? And Baba said, you're going home. I'm not listening to you. And they were very clear in their minds. So this is where Wanjiku is. And as you rightly say, we can ask all these questions, but the time is not yet there for us. We are not yet in that constitutional space, democratic space, where people can say, yes, we are of age, nobody is going to cheat us anymore. If it is your turn to eat, it might as well be my turn to eat. Earlier in the session, Honorable Kabogo, I had mentioned that those who went to Mombasa were the big 5.
Yes.
I didn't see some of the small 5s there. So where does that leave those small 5s, or, the others, as we are called, the minorities are called? Where does that leave them? So that keeps the Mwananchi, Wanjiko, in another space where they sit back, they fold their hands, decisions are made, they are told what to do. You will talk about civic education, Mule, and I know you are an expert.
Political education, not civic.
Yeah, and civic is good as well. You will talk about that.
Yes.
IBC can do their voter education, but it will not drive that message.
But can I add
recently, recently, there is a country where leaders brought rice to the public during elections, and they said, we don't want rice.
Yes, I remember.
They had to go back with the rice.
The people understand this thing.
Yeah,
they know.
It was actually Ghana.
Yes, they know.
The instruction in these stories, even Ghana has been in the doldrums like all the other countries in Africa, and you can see an event like that happening. Why I was pointing about the judiciary is that the instruction, and traction will take some time. Of course, we would wish that it happened within 9 months, so that in the next elections, then Kenyans are able to choose really who they want. But it's not, as much as we wish that, we have to also acknowledge the fact that there have been all these issues which have been going on, the elite conspiracy, but we are getting there. The Umtatas are taking things to court. The BBI ruling, which just happened about a week, and I'm very happy that the president has acknowledged that nobody lost in it, because I also don't see a loss. We went and settled an issue which was in dispute. There were no losers, there were no winners. Kenya won because we believed in an institution and an outcome came. Now, if we walked that path more, where you're saying, there's a particular dispute, it's a police issue, let the police handle it. Let IBC handle what they have to handle. And let the IBC be strong in what they are handling. Let the police and the IG become strong in what they are doing. Everybody, and the governors now, where Mheshimiwa was, they also take their role, because you were talking about devolution being one of the solutions to this, cake eating. Although it's still only 15%, remember that. There is that 85% which is still controlled by the national government. But that is a small story which also starts another narrative in the local spaces. That, you know what, there's a level of self-determination even in our villages that we can be able to do. So it's that consciousness built over time. If there's a catalyst, a leadership catalyst that enhances the people, and the problem is that you can't trust them to do this. But if it was there, then we can be able to gain faster in that particular regard. But as things stand, I'll choose to be a positive, an optimist as far as this issue is concerned, because I think we can still be able to get there.
You know, right now there's a conversation that is going on about taxation. Where when Chiko and everyone, Nyamakema is talked about, Gekolba, we are overtaxed. Are you telling me Wanjiko does not know that the person they sent to parliament is responsible for their taxation?
No, because that person will come back and tell them, when you elect me into office, I will cut taxes. No, they just tell you, and that time is a member of parliament or a senator.
Wanjiko will continue to suffer until the time they'll realize what it is that is theirs.
The power they want.
Right now, those MPs who are running around looking for seats of 22, they're saying, when you elect us, we will make sure that you're not overtaxed. It is his duty now
to ensure that.
It is his duty now. They're telling us about 35%. It has failed in BBI. The Constitution says not less than 15%. Why can't they go and do 35 now? Why is it that they want to tell the world that it is the leaders' problems? It is Uhuru. He's going to go home. We will go back through the same cycle again and again and again. And this thing, there's money coming to Wanjiko. Wait for money in the village. Money will never come like manna.
So
but they believe the story that money will be brought to the village.
Because they don't understand. They don't understand.
No, they're just ignorant. We allow and we pump ignorance. We fuel it.
Those of us who know, we should be able to explain it to them.
But you've just said they will not listen to you.
They will not listen, but they need to be
there. They told you come baba,
right now, the people of Kiambu, I rarely speak Kiambu, they know, elect a good leader, you will see results. Hospitals will be there, medicine will be there, there'll be excess water. Water is a right. They know. So they have to leave this problem, but not for too long. We need a revolution. That's what we want, to revolutionize
the mind
of the voter.
What should that look like?
It is very interesting when
the mind of the voter.
When you have a Mheshimiwa and a politician saying we need a revolution, but this is a discussion that is usually led by activists and such.
You know,
this level of activism is actually very interesting in the country.
And you know them. I don't want to mention people's names.
Okay.
That if truly it was about leadership, those people should never, ever have come anywhere near
close to leadership.
Positions of leadership.
So let me
but
put
it is
this.
the
You
system we
elect
have in
a
place.
governor. You elect a governor, and you know for sure, 100%,
They will just squander.
they will
public
not
resources.
do any work.
I want to throw this and take us back to why our elections degenerate to a matter of life and death. So much investment has been put into the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. We talked about the laws earlier, we talked about technology, but still, then what is the point of all of this and even the security functions we have in the ballot papers if it boils down to that deficit of trust? Then with all systems put in place, it will just come to one person saying, you know what, I just don't agree with this, and I think it's either my way or the highway. So what is the point then of all of these governance structures if at the end of the day we have not matured as to implement and operationalize those systems?
I think when it comes to elections, it's about the, and Honorable Kabogo, you are the politician here, it's about the perceptions that are peddled by politicians. So you find Mwananchi is conditioned. What the politician has said is gospel truth. I'll give you some examples from our neighboring countries. I have observed elections in Mozambique a little while back and in Tanzania. And in Tanzania, there were delays in that particular election. And when they saw us, some of us as observers with the East African Community Mission, when they saw us approaching with a vehicle, they just came politely and asked, are you the ones bringing the ballot papers? There were some delays with the ballot papers. And they asked politely, nyinyi ndio mmeleta makaratasi? We said we are not the ones. And they went back, sat where they were and waited. Tell me if that can work.
Kenya.
Tell me if that can work.
So
Anywhere in Kenya, it will not work. So
Why?
we need,
Why would
yeah,
you-
that
So what is the
revolution,
point?
and that trust. They trust their institutions. They trust the people who are in office. Much as we can criticize many things in their system, we also have things we can learn from
But how
them.
do I trust you
We can
when
learn
you tell
from
me on Monday that come next week, Tuesday, you are sure you cannot run a credible election? On Monday.
No,
Then on
sometimes
Thursday, you come and tell me, no, we can do it. We will do it.
I think
We shall do it.
that was an issue. That was an issue
It's
probably
just one of those
of
issues.
that time.
It's just one of those issues.
when there was a small
Why do
issue.
Kenyans have
But
no
I think
trust?
I think even when
Why is it?
when an election officer comes out to say they cannot do something, then listen to them. Why have they
If you
given a
don't
reason?
facilitate me in
Yes.
this way,
Why is
then
it
becomes
the
not
level of trust
facilitated.
of Kenyans is so low?
If you are not facilitated,
I think-
you will
I
not
think-
deliver.
I think-
But if you are given what you need and
Yes.
given the space
Exactly.
to work, you will deliver.
perhaps,
that is what I wanted
You
to
will
say.
deliver. And the patience and tolerance is what we need also.
Mule,
Other than
before you
trust.
come in, and it will bring us back, we've just mentioned here that perhaps Kenyans are not mature enough to be in this space. But then how about politicians? Because even the low trust that you're talking about in institutions like the RABC do stem from these politicians themselves. We just saw the other day during the burial of the father of the Kajwangs, TJ Kajwang and Moses Kajwang. Some ODM members of parliament have already started saying we cannot go to the election with Chebukati and the RABC as is right now. So then already you're casting aspersions to this particular body and expecting Kenyans to have full public confidence in this. I think politicians engineer this from the very word go, and they know what they're doing, so that then if the result does not come
How
to
do the politicians get there?
But you know, actually the story started from what Mheshimiwa was talking about. He started off by saying that leadership in this country is wanting, and it's been it's the one which is actually taking people to those ages where you have no trust in the system, because nothing, trust comes from a process where you do something and you actually see the result of it. You're looking for food, you get the food. You're looking for water, you go to a place where water is supposed to be given, and you get your water. You'll trust now the sources, the direction, and everything. But when you keep going, somebody tells you water can be found in this place, and you can't get the water. And you're even not sure whether you can even get to the water. When the story keeps changing, goalposts are being changed all over the place, then there's no trust. You cannot trust anybody. Now we must start asking ourselves, so who are these players? Who are these change makers who create these goalposts? Who create the myriad of goalposts? If you want to score at one end, one of the things about governance and a settled argument about how states are run is certainty of how things are done. That if I want to farm through I have my small 10-acre farm, I can do this, and whatever comes out of it, there's a nearly certain process of how I can be able to take it to the market. It's very clear. But these rules keep being muddled by people in office or people in positions of making those decisions. When a peasant who cannot not ask those very complex questions about the system, when you tell them about an election system, you tell them about a governance system, Siri Kali, how do those people interpret that for their daily welfare? That's where the problem of trust comes in. And I think, to answer your question, politicians are smack in the middle of it, in terms of muddying those waters, because they're not creating a very clear, it's called what, the thing which is done by,
canvas, landscape?
No, these not witch doctors, they're called what? The ones who create this, they can be able to see something clearly about the gaze.
Like future tellers?
Yes, future tellers. I mean, you're supposed to create such a clarity, vision in terms of crystal ball. It's not very clear. You make it, and you're doing it for a purpose. If you create a football match which has 10 goalposts, there's something you're trying to do. Right. There's an end to the confusion.
But when it is very clear... sorry to cut you. You're reminding me, when I was in the commission, we used to say the politicians, they are the big stakeholders and they're also the stakeholders. Because when it comes to resources, again, they know where to square it out with you. And yet, when they go out there to the Mwananchi, they tell a different story. So they are the big stakeholders, and they wield it when they have to wield it. And to the detriment of
the reason for them being the main stakeholders is because the real stakeholders have allowed it. The cycle is always the same.
But let me ask you, Wanjiku is yet to be empowered to wield the power and exercise it in the fashion you have said.
Wanjiku is not that ignorant. From 1992, they came to the podium and promised you things. Did they deliver? When is it that they get the scorecard? 1997. Did they deliver? Let's come closer. 2013, when the duo, Uhuru Kenyatta and
we even changed the
Ruto.
Constitution in 2010.
Yes.
And devolved powers. Devolved those powers.
Yes,
so
we did.
This would have been devolution conference.
Yes, we did.
We can have some sense of equity.
Yes,
of
we
fairness.
did. Yes. And we made promises. Wanjiku listened to the promises. We came again 2017. The next 10 years after a new constitution, they made promises.
They're still making
right now, they are making promises.
So let me ask you, because this would have been devolution.
How stupid are we?
Devolution conference. We spoke about this a little bit earlier with the other guest. That
tell me who has not been. Let me just challenge one little one. Tell me who has not been minister in all these people you've been talking about.
It's the same monkeys. Different forests.
The same monkeys, same forest, you expect different results.
Okay, the trees are changing colors.
You mentioned them, all of them. They've been ministers. Nobody wants to audit what it is they did when they had that small chance.
So it boils down, as you're saying, to the people. Because the people are given an opportunity every 5 years and they opt for the same.
So let's tell the people candidly, make the same mistake you made last time.
And
You live in
expect
The same results.
I hear the story about the people, but don't forget that the same people are the same two boys who are being killed in very murky circumstances by flouting very simple rules. It is the same villagers, people who are shooting each other. These are people who the system is even scaring them out of their own in their own existence. So you create a system of fear that and you still expect these people to stand up and be able to, work for themselves. It's not been very easy. And the other second aspect of it is that we also if you go back to the African tradition, we had, Africans grew in societies where we had gatekeepers. Gatekeeping was like the order of the day of governance. People who are the ones who are wielding power on behalf of people. We are yet to even outdo that in the modern setup, because we still had gatekeepers. Even today, we're still having gatekeepers for our communities. And they're still the ones who are making, giving opinions, the ones who are speaking for my people, what wangu wamesema. It is still the same trend. So we are in that wake, while at the same time, the state is also visiting you with violence, uncertainties. It is taxing you, as you say, taxing you in such a way that you cannot be able to make any investments for your future. So in such a scenario, and this is what I'm calling muddled waters, how do you expect this person to just wake up and say, I have the power? So we have to go through the process through a transition, and it is happening from where I sit. I think it is happening in small doses. Over time, we'll get to the level that he's talking about, where the traction gets to the level of even a revolution.
What I'm getting here then is we shouldn't expect magic in 2022. We'll likely see the same thing we have been seeing over the years.
Although I wonder, Akisa, to that point, the president began a conversation, it was I think during a burial, where he said this thing has to move beyond
from
two
the other
communities.
tribes, yes.
Does that in and of itself have potential to create that kind of hostility, in that if you end up with another from one of those communities, then it's also a recipe for violence?
If you do not want another one from those communities, change the law. But the law is simple. It is simple. Majority. Win the election, 50+1, and that's it. So the conversation the president is bringing is a little too late. Why didn't he bring that conversation in 2013?
He was running for office.
Correct.
So the circus continues.
It's our time to eat.
But you see, we changed the constitution so as to make it difficult. Remember, before you could even win with 30%, as long as you're first past the post.
So
but
if you
now
can't
with
win
50%+1,
if your tribe, because
you have to
politics,
marshal support from around you.
If your tribe,
that's why we're seeing a lot of
politics,
meetings going on because
Kenyan
of
politics
this 50%.
is basically tribal politics. If your tribe cannot marshal 50+1, then you go finding
Another tribe.
And that is
it has to be a big one.
And that is why we're having the alliances
a lot of
at the
meetings
moment.
every week.
Because, like I said in the first session, the 5 top communities make 65% of the population in the country. And therefore, all it takes, if you're talking about 50+1, all it takes is just 2 of those communities.
We actually put other conditions of 25%, a minimum of 25% in 24 counties.
Which brings now the alliances. Because now, you see, that's what it actually farms up those alliances. Because what they are saying is...
So we have the law, it is perfect.
So we don't need to change.
So let me ask this.
But we have Wanjiku who does not understand her right.
Because she's controlled from the elite.
So we'll continue,
two issues.
we'll continue controlling them until the date they will agree to elect a DJ. In some countries, they just decide, we are tired of these people, we are going to have a DJ.
I need your sentiments, because we said this earlier, that at the end of the day, even when the country has degenerated into violence, it's not from nowhere. The writing is always on the wall. You see it coming, but guys either will ignore the signs or will walk over it.
Pattern
so two
can be
things.
established.
Exactly.
First and foremost, violence is
Let me land. 2 issues here. And we talked about this earlier, where those who have said the hustler narrative is one that could polarize the classes war. But the other one becomes the point I just made, that if the president is leaving the country telling folks, you need to move beyond these 2 tribes, are those 2, from each of you I want to hear, are these recipes for disaster going forward? Should we be careful the kind of narratives and rhetoric we are seeing out there? I'll begin with you, Honorable Zaja.
I think I would say any narrative now is already divisive. Whether you are talking of Hustler Nation or whether you are talking of the One Kenya Alliance bringing everyone together, it is already divisive, because if you don't subscribe to those ideals of that One Kenya Alliance, will you fit there? You'll not. So you'll draw a line and say, these ones are on one camp. And then the Hustler Nation will be on another camp. They are all divisive. All we need is a Kenyan narrative. If we can get a Kenyan narrative, I don't know.
Go to the Kenyan narrative.
Tell us how to get a Kenyan narrative, because for once I talked about the big five and the small five who are not seen, and even some are classified as others. They don't even have any. They are insignificant, so to say. So if we get that right, then we shall be talking of alliances or coalitions that can take us forward in an election that will be all-inclusive and bring people to the table, everybody to the table. But as it is now, a few people are deciding for the majority.
Do you know that it is possible for Mwananchis to decide the alliance? You go to Kiambu and they're like, don't tell us anything. This is where we want to go. You come with us or you are left behind. This is where we want to go. That time should come when it is not 20 of us who sit and decide where the country will go. And I can see Kenyans now saying no to some of those things. You can see it.
See, I talked about optimism. I talked about optimism. You're still coming to that direction.
We had talked about this false sense of entitlement. False because we are so many. Why aren't we bringing, or why are we not including other people? Why is it that only those few are entitled?
You know, you go to the people, you will go to the people and tell them, we will bring this to you when you elect us. They'll say, we had that story a long time ago.
Yes.
And it's a recycled one.
Yes.
So let me say this. The issue of moving away from the current status will change once we start organizing ourselves around the issues which are affecting us. And I like, again, that position that Governor has taken, or at least he has appreciated, that he can be able to move to Kiambu, and there's a way people have already made a decision. If you follow through how they're making those decisions, it's from the same things that he's saying, you know, we have had this before. We are learning. We've had this before. But my issue to do with milk in the house is not being settled. My issue to do with school fees is not being settled. And I need somebody who thinks through the process to help me on dealing with my problems which I'm facing. I earlier highlighted that in a study which was done just recently, the major issue that people are facing in this country is unemployment and high costs of living. And people are starting to ask themselves questions. So Honorable Karabogo is coming to me and is seeking for a position of leadership. What does he offer in respect to the issues that I'm facing? So it's no longer, so the questions will keep changing. And that's why I was saying I'm praying for time. Yes, you can only take advantage of people up to a certain point. It's not going, for only too long. It's not going to be throughout.
But you talk about organizing ourselves on issues that we care about.
Yes.
But seemingly the politicians are still finding cracks to take advantage of this. One, everyone now is scrambling for economic models because it's the biggest issue on the table right now.
What does Wanjiko know about economic models?
I love the fact that there's a discussion around whatever ideology. Is it bottom up? Is it trickle down? Do we even understand what these people mean? Some of the leaders are even having a problem trying to explain the models themselves. You know, but it doesn't matter for me. At least the conversation is there. The narrative is changing.
You know, we're
no longer about
we're lying to
this
ourselves.
Group and the other group.
We're lying to ourselves. The conversation of models is not in the village. That conversation is here in Nairobi. It is during rallies. It is during church functions where I get the mic and you want to speak good English and tell people the model.
Continues to be an elite
that
conversation.
Story is not in the village. And as I say, the villager will know one day. Go and do your stories. At the same time, the villager will know it's not by getting one mama mboga and taking her to MCA that will help us. We need to find the right MCA who creates an environment by doing policy issues. When will Wanjiku understand that the MP is not supposed to bring you money? When will Wanjiku understand that? That school fees is not the responsibility of your MP? When will we change this narrative?
When they become economically empowered,
and how will that happen?
Run their businesses,
isn't it only
run
through
their
policy?
Lives.
Government lays down policy, brings resources, and makes resources available at the very ground level, where every person who wants to work hard will earn.
So our time is running out. We have 3 minutes to go. So from each of you, I think
Wanjiku amuka. Wewe ndio shida.
Amuka
ujibebe.
I think to hear
ujibebe. Amuka ujibebe.
From each of you is how do we root out election-related violence in this country, that we can go comfortably to 2022? Because you see, the economy literally begins to grind to a halt a year two, and a year after. Everyone is in jitters, you don't know. So how do we have an election?
One simple one.
Okay. Briefly.
In Kibra,
yes,
there is a Kikuyu, a Kalenjin, and a Luo. They stay next door. Wanaombana chumvi in simple language, but they know that there are these tribes during electioneering. So who's fooling who here? It is them. They are the problem. Do not fight your neighbor. Because Uhuru, Kaboko, and Raila are competing. And if anything, when we are fighting, Kaboko's son, Raila's son, they are not there. Ni wewe na mwenzako, mujinga ni nani?
Quite passionate about that.
I'll say this. I will not add anything on what Mheshimiwa said, because I think that message needs to hit home. That one, I will hold also that position. However, there are other things, because the same Wanjiku is also part of the people who are also asking for positions of power anyway, as members of parliament, as the MCS. We need to get some level of political hygiene in our politics. I think I was having a discussion with you when you were calling it bad manners.
Yes.
That, you know, the idea that we cannot be able to institutionalize our political parties, we cannot be able to institutionalize the processes, we cannot be able to respect our institutions, is something that we can be able to. This is a software issue. It is not a hardware. It's not something that we need policies on. It's a question of people just saying, you know what, let's see what IBC can do. Let's see what the police can do. Let's see what the political party that I am there and off can do. So that is something that you need to do. And then let's try to make these things very simple for me. Again, I always anchor myself to Article 86 of the Constitution, which talks about a simple process. Let's not complicate lives with all these complexities. You know, the election has to be a complicated process, or the way we have a security system in our country has to be a complicated. Security is a simple issue. It does not need a lot of science in it. Can we make it simple so that it is palatable for Wanjiku to be able to understand it and comprehend?
For me, my issue is leadership. Leadership, as you say, we need more hygiene in that. For me, it is just what our leaders start exhibiting during this period when we are running to elections. Remember, they drop guard. There is no sieving of their words. And, you know, offline, we were just discussing a video showing Mule here and told him, just see what our leaders are already talking. Utterances in public, hate speeches are already on, and they're not even being monitored. Everybody is dropping guard. Why? Because they want...
I had to stop you and say anything. No. I'm only saying, I want to join you in what you're saying. But that clarion call, when this insultive language comes out of a leader, who cheer?
The people cheer because they feel intimidated. They don't even want... Yeah, they say...
You know, someone is talking,
intimidated.
You know,
they don't even know. Or they're just in that...
We have people... We have people who say unprintable things.
There's a level of suffering which
and the members of the public,
we need to
they
go
go crazy.
Yeah,
all right.
When it was
they love it.
If it was in a normal conversation,
Yes.
you'd not even utter the words
Very true.
those leaders utter.
Yes.
So I think it goes back to the question of leadership. Okay. Why do we have those principles in Chapter 6 of our Constitution? Why do we have the Leadership and Integrity Act? I think some of those rules for vetting of leaders should just be brought back in full force, so that we can elect leaders who will serve.
But why can't we make it simple and let Wanjiku vet properly?
No, Wanjiku
She
will not
vets
vet.
through
We
the
have
ballot.
institutions that can vet.
Our time.
And, get leaders who can serve vis-a-vis leaders who are looking forward to the eating.
All right.
That is what we want.
We really have to end it, but I think we have something.
Yes, we have what you'll expect in the paper tomorrow. Let's have a look at that very quickly. The Standard newspaper. As we wrap up our conversation this evening, it's 2 minutes past 11 on this 23rd day of August. And there's Uhuru's tough task in crafting. It's moving up, I hope. Raila okay deal. So that's all of what's been going on in trying to get these leaders together. He's talking about that unity rallying call. As we leave you, we'll leave you with actually what President Kenyatta, when he was doing that interview with the senior editors a little bit earlier, talked about his relationship with the Deputy President William Ruto. Talking about he's bringing the leaders together, but there appears to be this one. When asked why isn't he part of this talk, so you'll get to hear what he's saying shortly. But I want to first thank our guest this evening, William Kabogo, Pioneer Governor. I don't know what you're gesturing on, but Pioneer Governor Kiambu County, Mula Musau, ILOG National Director, and of course Lilian Mahirizaja, former IBC Vice Chair. Thank you all for being with us and sharing your thoughts, and of course the lovely.
Thank you for being here, Sophia. It's up on that note.
Yeah, thank you very much on behalf of the team for watching. Let's have a look at what the president had to say on DP Ruto.
In any decent, civilized society where people disagree, all right, the honorable thing that leaders do is to say, I disagree with the policies of this government, and therefore I wish to disassociate myself from them, and you tender your resignation. I wish this is what people would also do. Because, as they say, you can't live in a glass house and also throw stones. You're in the same house and you're also throwing stones to demolish it. Right? Okay? I have tried as much as possible to make sure that everything that we do, I keep everybody also within government involved, and even some of those people who are criticizing have been part and parcel. Yeah? And this is why I'm saying it's very unfortunate. Yeah? But like I want to reiterate, I have an agenda that I was elected on, and that work must continue. And it would be really the honorable thing that if you are not happy with it, that you would actually, step aside and allow those who want to move on, and then take your agenda to the people, which is what happens in any normal, democracy, because you can't have your cake and eat it. Yeah, you can't on the one hand say I'm not going, and because at the same time I don't agree. You've got to decide, because you must be principled in that endeavor. Yeah? That's what happens in a democracy, so that you don't confuse people. On the one hand, you want to sing the praises of a government that you are saying that yes, this is we have done, and you want to ride on that. But yet, on the other side of your mouth, you're talking another language.
This is KTN News.
The night gets cold and the chill takes hold. Cozy up.